Greetings, Jelly Spoons, and welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where we talk about anything and everything, and today I'm talking about character descriptions. Bear with me, it will make some sense, or as much sense as anything that I do on this channel does. Today we're talking about character descriptions. Let's get into it. So this is a topic that has been brought up by literally nothing except a conversation I was having with my partner the other day about characters and the podcast that I'm writing and different shows that we've been in, different books that we love, that kind of thing. So I have mentioned the Black Dog a few times on this channel before, but for anyone who does not know, hi, I'm maukusnoise and I'm writing a podcast. It's called The Black Dog. It's based on a character called Moxie Brethren, who I have played in at least 5 different D&D campaigns and several one-shots in varying different skins. It was always the same person. Occasionally he had a different name, but it was always the same guy. Anyway, I created a story about him and then I turned it into a podcast. I have managed to rope in some truly amazing people who are doing voice acting for me. We are very nearly finished with the final stages of casting the last few episodes, and we have done many table read-throughs. We're about to do the last few in the next few weeks. I am very excited. So the podcast should be coming out hopefully sometime this year. I would really like episode 1 to be ready for Pride Month, but if not, the finale might be ready for Pride Month 2025. Hopefully. So this podcast is my baby. I've got a few other projects and different costumes I'm making this year, but this podcast really is something very special, very important. It's a story I really want to tell, and if I get any listeners at all, I will be completely delighted. And that's what I was talking about the other day with my partner. We then started talking about who our favourite characters were within my podcast, The Black Dog, but also in other media as well. And then we thought about who other people's favourite characters might be. I know a lot of the cast have favourite characters, not just the ones that they're playing. And I also know that some of my friends who have read through the scripts for me, they have favourite characters as well. And then we got onto the subject of how would people imagine these characters? What would they think they looked like? What would a listener of my story imagine my characters to look like? And the huge, big, resounding thing that just hit me over and over again while we were having this conversation is I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I don't mind. You can imagine my characters however you want. And then I started thinking, how much description have I even put into this show? And I went back because we've been reading through it quite recently. I read through a bunch of the episodes and I thought, no, there really is no character descriptions in this, next to none. I'll get into what character descriptions there are in a few moments. But then this train of thought started to spiral a little bit, as my brain does. And I started to wonder whether character descriptions in podcasts or in books are even necessary. So come with me on my little delvy journey into my brain where I try to work out what I think about it. Alright, here we go. Massive disclaimer before we get into this conversation. So, obviously, I love J.M. Barrie's work. I have talked about this many different times. I've made the Peter Pan Lore YouTube channel. I talk about it over on TikTok all the time. And I love Tolkien. I love C.S. Lewis. I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I love big, long, sweeping descriptions of things. I friggin' love description. I eat it up. I love poetry. I love descriptive writing. I love flowery dialogue and all of this. All this to say, when there is a good character description, I love it. Take, for example, the description of Captain Hook. I'm not going to turn this into a Peter Pan lore video. I'm not going to do it. But there is a lot of description. We know what his hair colour looks like. We know what his skin looks like. We know what his coat looks like. We know what his eyes look like. We know exactly how he holds himself, how he walks, how he moves, all of that. Flip that and reverse it, though, because the titular character in that story, Peter Pan himself, has no description at all. All we know about him is that he still has all of his milk teeth and he wears skeleton leaves, the juices from trees, and cobwebs. That is it. This is the title character. We have no idea what he looks like. And then I started thinking, but that's what I love about the story of Peter Pan. You can imagine him however you want. I've said this in so many other videos. What does Peter Pan look like? Anything you want. So I am willing to admit that this has perhaps carried over a little bit into my own writing, kind of subconsciously. All of that to just basically do the disclaimer that I love a good character description. I love a good description of anything. If it's good and if it's necessary, I love it. But now let's talk about whether or not character descriptions even are. So when we're talking about character descriptions, particularly in books, remember that illustrations in books are not the be-all end-all, and often the author doesn't even agree with them, so we'll disregard those for now. Alright then, on to the discussion. The first thing I'll talk about on the side of, yes, character descriptions are necessary is, I hope, something that should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway, and that is if any part of how the character visually looks, be it their race, the colour of their skin, the colour of their hair, the colour of their eyes, some sort of tattoo, a thing they've got on them, anything like that, if some part of their physical appearance is relevant to the plot. Whether it's they're the chosen one and they have gold shiny scales, whether it's they are a demon in a world full of angels and they have horns, whether they're hiding something, whether they're facing racism, sexism, anything like that. If something that is physical about them is plot relevant, then yes, of course, that kind of thing needs to be told to the audience. They need to know that because it's going to come up, presumably a lot, during the rest of the story, and it is plot relevant. Point number 2, which I personally see as going both ways, kinky. And this is the idea of a character's physical appearance being a way for people to relate to that character. Now, I do struggle with this one just a little bit. And the reason why I put it into both camps is because I can understand the arguments for both. On the side of, yes, describing appearances is necessary, I do understand the idea that if you know and are told that a character bears a similar physical resemblance to you, either in skin tone, either in hair color, maybe in horns. Anyone watching me have horns? Gimme. But anything physical, be it something as small as having freckles or red hair, something that they too, the audience, the reader, may have been picked on or had trouble understanding, or possibly something they'll have struggled with their entire life, something physical like that. Maybe it's discrimination, maybe it's bullying, maybe it's just finding life physically harder. All of those things the audience can relate to, and so of course I understand including them for that purpose. On the flip side of this, I personally never require that. Let me explain. So I don't need to be anything like a character. I don't need to relate to a character in order to enjoy them. In fact, I personally, a lot of the characters that I enjoy the most don't really relate to very much at all, or in not too many ways. I think that we might be similar in certain aspects, but definitely I wouldn't describe it as relating to them. And to me, this is important, because if I wanted to read about essentially myself, then I would just go and read my diary. But I do understand that is completely subjective. That is just me. I want to read about characters who are very different to me, and those are the ones I'm going to enjoy the most. Whereas other people really enjoy characters who are similar to them, either in personality or, in terms of this video, in appearance. And I can absolutely understand it, even if it's not my bag myself. For the sake of keeping this video short enough that I can edit it quickly, because I have to catch a flight to Germany very, very soon. The third and final thing that I'll bring up in this why segment is quite simply just, if you include character descriptions, then your audience is going to imagine the characters exactly the same way that you, the author, does. And surely this is a good thing. You've created these characters, you've got them in your head, you're creating a story for them, you're bringing them to the world, you're showing them to everyone. I can understand wanting people to imagine them in the same way that you created them. As you wrote them, they might have grown and changed a little bit, but you've got this idea of them in your head. And of course, I can understand it being quite a natural notion that you want to describe them to within an inch of their life sometimes, purely so that the people who are enjoying your story can also enjoy these characters as you imagine them yourself. Let's hold on to that then as we move into the next section of this video, which I'm going to call, What Am I Doing Then? So it has taken me a little while, and any of the people in the Discord server for the podcast will tell you this. It has taken me a little while to realize that anything I create, anytime I answer a question, any bits of lore that I imagine for these characters, any background bits of details, any out of the story stuff, yeah, that's not just headcanons. That is in fact canon because I'm the author. Who knew? And this year I did get paid to write some things, so I am actually an author, and that's very weird for me to say, and I'm still getting used to it. And the notion that anything I create is not just headcanon fanfic, but is in fact my own characters, it's still taking a while to sink in. However, I am the author of this story. I have created these characters and I have woven the story. I have written the scripts, the podcast is ready to go, I have edited it, I have cast people. It was all, you know, coming from me. So of course I have versions of these characters in my head. The characters that I created and I came up with when I am writing them, when I'm imagining the scenes, when I'm creating the stories. Yes, I imagine the characters in my head. But the thing is, I have never once wanted to describe them so much that the audience listening to the podcast imagines them exactly the same way that I do. So let's talk about some of my characters now. I'm going to take you through the main 5. This sounds like My Little Pony. God, I do love Pinkie Pie. I'm wearing pink fluff today. I'm a little bit Pinkie Pie. And a little bit Has Been Hotel. Shh. So I will take you through the main 5 characters of the podcast. So if you do get interested in these characters, you can go look it up. You can follow it on TikTok and everything. It's not started yet, but there'll be loads of behind the scenes things coming too. If you want to support it, there's a Ko-fi. Anyway, I'm not going to turn this into a plug. Okay, the 5 main characters. Let's talk about them. But most importantly, their physical descriptions and what is included in the podcast. So I will start with the main character, the main man, the one that the whole show is named after, the Black Dog. This is a pirate Cambion, because I don't want to get sued for using the word tiefling. So he is a pirate Cambion. His name is Moxie Brethren. His pirate name is the Black Dog because his father's pirate name is the Black Wolf. He was called this because he has a big black bushy mane of hair and beard. Moxie inherited the big bushy hair, and so he is the Black Dog, his father's pup. The physical descriptions that I included of Moxie Brethren in the podcast are: he's a Cambion, so he has horns. He is the Black Dog. He has black shaggy hair. He has blue eyes. This is mentioned, I think, once at one point during the entire podcast. He has a metal peg leg with a claw on the end. It was purchased for him by his father after his own leg got shot off and smashed to pieces by a cannonball. And lastly, he is covered in tattoos. Can you tell this is the character I made? He has a few tattoos of different meanings. He has the flag of their ship on his back. He's got a thing on his chest. He's got sirens and mermaids going up and down his arms. He's got various different things. And he has a tattoo of his father on his arm. And that is it. The main character of the 50-episode podcast, that's as much as you know about him. He is covered in tattoos, you know what a few of them are. He is missing one of his legs and has a metal peg leg. He's got dark shaggy hair, and he is a Cambion who has horns. Next up, we have the healer mage. His name is Gen, and he is too tired for your bullshit. The only physical description we ever get of Gen is that he has green hair. We only know this because at one point he comments on it because it's difficult to find clothes that match. Character number 3 is Apricot. She is a fawn. That's it. That's all we know. Oh, and at one point we learn that she is small, or at least smaller than one character who comments about it. That's it. All right, moving on to character number 4, Van. Or Vanillerith, to use his full name. Nobody ever does though, don't do that. His name is Van. Van is an Ignis elf. Yep. When Moxie first meets Van, he describes how he looks as cool as fuck. Later on in the story, we also learn that Van is very bad at snowball fighting because the snow sizzles a little bit and slowly melts when he holds it. But that is it. And finally, to the 5th main character. Man, this sounds like My Little Pony so badly. Ah, Pinkie Pie. So the 5th character is called Eastleigh. Now, she has 0 physical descriptions at all. Going very briefly a little bit further into the rest of the story, there are some characters who are described as Cambions, so we know that they have horns. There are some characters who are described as demons from the abyss, and we know that they look a bit more scary. There are some characters who we do know the hair colour of. There is one character who is a giant spoiler, so I'm not going to say anything, but they are described as having emerald green eyes and red hair. But that is it. That is all the physical descriptions that I, the author, included in my podcast with my characters, with my story. I didn't tell you what any of them look like particularly. I don't even describe what an Ignis elf is. That is entirely up to you when you are listening. Now, in my head I've got a picture, but who's to say that that's right? Someone else might imagine something better. I mean, I would love someone to cosplay Van. That would be insane. I would love to see it. But I'm not going to stand there and go, oh, your cosplay isn't exactly what I had in my head, therefore it's wrong. Absolutely not. In fact, I'm more likely to look at it and go, yeah, that's right. That's better than I could possibly have imagined. But why? The conclusion that I came to in my pretty little brain is that I do not mind. Anyone who listens to this, I'll be grateful for. And anyone who listens to this can imagine my characters however the damn hell they want. And this is because any description I have not given you is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. All you need to know about Moxie is that he has dark hair, and he has loads of tattoos, and he's a Cambion with a metal peg leg. All you need to know about Van is he is a type of elf. They're called Ignis elves. Probably a little bit flamey. Do with that what you will. Gen has green hair, is a magical healer, and is too tired for your shit. Apricot's a fawn, and Eastleigh is... who the fuck knows? And that's fun to me. And so the biggest thing that I realized when thinking about this, because at one point I had the scripts open in front of me and I was going, should I go through? Should I add more descriptions? Should I? And it felt like shoehorning it in, but I was going, I'll do it. I can do it. Do I need to? Should I add stuff in? Do people need to know how these characters look? Shall I give exposition through speech? Shall people describe how they look? Somehow I could work that in there. I'm a writer, I could work it in. But it just feels janky and awkward. It doesn't feel right for me in my story, particularly as it's a podcast. It's not even a book where you could describe a character. This is a podcast. And I realized I do not mind, because I created these characters, sure. But by telling this story, I am giving them to people. Whoever wants to listen, whoever wants to enjoy this story, I give you these characters. Imagine them however you want, because the details you need to know are already in there. But the rest is just confetti.
The rest is confetti.
Because what I created, the true bit, the bit that I created when I made all these characters is, that's it. I made characters. I made personalities. I made what they like and don't like. I made where their story's going to go. I made what their decisions might be, although sometimes they run away from you, because characters do that. Have you ever noticed that when you're writing a scene and then suddenly the characters just go off and you're like, go off, kid, go off, and they just do it better than you could ever have imagined? No one else? No? Cool. Right, yeah, it's cool. I have complete control over my own narrative, it's fine. But the important bit is that I created their personalities, their soul, their spirit, their being, who they are. That's what I created. If anything on the outside is relevant, I've mentioned it because it's necessary. But everything else just isn't. So why would I force that on you? Why would I push that on the audience when you can imagine them however you want and the story will remain exactly the same? Gen can be 6'7" or 4'3", this story changes not a bit. An Ignis elf can have dark skin with lava flowing through it, or they can just be a normal looking elf with flamey hair. They can be anything you imagine. And that part of the story does not change. And realizing all of this was incredibly freeing, and it kind of gave me more hope that people might enjoy this podcast more, because you can imagine them however you like. And that means that you can draw them however you like in your art. And that means that anyone can cosplay them and not be wrong. Because there's literally no descriptions. If nothing else, getting really, really basic, I describe nobody's skin color in this entire series. So you can be anyone from anywhere, and you can cosplay these characters or draw these characters, and you're not wrong. Even if only a handful of people listen to this story, that's a handful of people who get to imagine my characters however they friggin' want. And that is hella exciting for me. I'm pretty sure this video was supposed to be leading to a point. I guess I'll wrap up the video by saying, sometimes, absolutely, character descriptions are very necessary. If something about their physical appearance is relevant to the plot, or if it's very, very important to the author to include, then absolutely they should be included. But if it's not necessary, why bother? Let people imagine them however you like. If the story does not change based at all on what the characters look like, why tie them down with a physical description? Let them be free. Let them roam free and look however we imagine. And if that means that you imagine Moxie Brethren to be neon green with bright pink horns and, I don't know, seashells instead of nipples, go for it. Go for it. Someone's going to draw fan art of that now, aren't they? Tag me if you do. Alright, I love you all. Thank you for listening to this absolute ball of chaos that was today's Monday Madness. I am filming it very, very late at night. Can you tell? The chaos is winning. Hello, dog. The dog's awake. I'm going to go and pet my dog now. No, that's not a euphemism. Get your minds out of the gutter. I love you all. Come and support me over on Ko-fi. I have a Ko-fi page. It's maukusnoise. I'll put the link in the doobly-doo down below. Doobly-doobly-doo down below. I also have the black dog that has a Ko-fi as well, because I want to separate them so the people who are supporting the podcast itself, as opposed to just me, can have a separate place to go. And there is also Peter Pan Law, but that's a whole separate thing. Go check it out. Alright, I love you all. Hydrate yourselves.